Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to be going over measures 43 to 51 in Tadihe. You know the drill. Description box, click on the timestamp for your section, and let's get started. Okay, first violin. So there's actually kind of a lot going on in this section here at 43. So to get your pencil and let's mark in a few things, starting with the fingerings. At the end of 43, that A, you're going to want to play with a fourth finger. In 44, you're going to hit the G sharp with a high 3, and you might want to mark beat 3, that G is also sharp because the accidental lasts for the whole measure. Measure 45, that G goes back to natural, and they do give you a courtesy accidental for that. In 46, the F sharp, again, accidental lasts for the whole measure, so you've got it on beat 1, and it's also going to affect beat 3. And in 47, the last note of the measure, F natural, it goes back to natural. In 48 and 49, you have divisi. So I'm going to talk about the outside part first. So if you're on the outside, you're going to be playing the notes that have the stems facing up, and these are all half notes. So 48, you're going to play A fourth finger, A fourth finger. 49, A fourth finger again, and then G sharp, high 3 right behind it. If you're on the inside, 48 and 49, you've got E, C in measure 48. Then in 49, you've got D sharp, which you're going to play with a low 1. Then B on the A string, you're going to play in half position with your second finger. So if you had a first finger tape, your second finger is going to go right there. Then open D, and you can go back to regular first finger for the next B. Inside people, while we're talking about this, we're going to change the bowing in measure 48. So the E to the C eighth note, we're actually going to slur on a down bow, and then we're going to stagger an up bow during the dotted half note C. That's going to put us on a down bow at 49, and it's also going to help you do that crescendo in measure 48. So this is what that bowing is going to look like. I'm going to play through measures 48 and 49, the inside people's part, just to show how this rhythm and fingering and bowing is going to work. Before I do, just take a look at measure 48. You've got E, C, eighth notes, and then that C is tied to a dotted half note. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and E, C, 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then I'm going to stagger my up bow, crescendo, low 1, 2 right next to it for the B, open D, regular B. Okay, so let's do that in some sort of tempo. One more time, and go. Other things to mention for everybody would be the dynamics. In 43, you start out fortissimo, and that lasts all the way through the end of 46. In 47, you are piano. I would write tip above that up bow in 47. There's no decrescendo. It's a subito piano, and you're going to start at the tip. In 48, of course, you've got the crescendo, 49, crescendo again, and then you're back to forte at 50. The last thing I want to mention is just these articulations are the same as what we were doing yesterday. So look at 44 and 46. The first two eighth notes have a tenuto mark and then a dot. So that first one is going to be long, and then the second one you're going to come off the string. Okay, so I'm going to set my metronome at 100 and play through this. 2, 3, 4, rest, rest. Now I'm going to play it as if you were playing the top part. 3, 4, rest, rest. Just a couple of things I noticed while I was playing. In measure 50, you've got that rhythm that we talked about a lot when we were preparing for festival, where you have an eighth note followed by an eighth rest, and it's just going to sound like a quarter note with a dot on it. Also, I wanted to point out the bowing in measures 44 and 46. We've had this exact rhythm with these exact notes before. Look at measure 38. 38 was down, up, slur, up. Now in 44 and 46, they're asking for us to take out the slur and do a double up instead. Down, up, down, up. So really bring that bowing out and put maybe a little bit of an accent on the down bow quarter note. Okay, that's all I've got. Happy practicing, and I will see you back here tomorrow for the next part. All right, second violins, let's mark in a few things before we play through this. Starting at measure 43, you've got a measure's worth of rest. In measure 44, you've got the same articulation markings that you had in measures 41 and 42. So you've got a tenuto mark on the first eighth note, a dot on the second, which means your first eighth note is going to be heavier and long, and then you're going to come off the string on the second one. You've got a measure of rest in 45, and then 46 happens. I don't know if you guys know this, but I have kind of an aversion to special effects in music, and I would rather have this part played by an actual percussion instrument. Since we don't have an actual percussion instrument, I'm going to meet the composer halfway. Instead of clapping, if you can just knock on your instrument with your right hand. So this is what that's going to look like. So basically you'll be playing along, right? You'll play measure 44. You're going to put your bow down for 1, 2, 3. And the rhythm is rest, 2, 3, and a 4, and 1. So that's how we're going to handle that. Then in measure 48, all of a sudden your piano, you might want to circle that. You were previously playing fortissimo at 44. You also might want to mark in measure 48 that F is natural. Put an arrow down over it. Then in 49, you've got a D sharp, which is going to be a low 1. The B that follows it on the G string is a high 2, so it's actually going to be a step and a half, whereas your first finger would normally be here, and then the 2 would be here. Now you're going to have an even bigger stretch. So low 1, high 2, 4 for the D natural, and then low 1 again for the G sharp. Following that in measure 50, you've got that rhythm that we talked about when we were preparing for sight reading, where you've got an eighth note followed by an eighth rest. So it's just going to sound like quarter notes with dots on them. But then you'll notice that you've got 2 eighth note rests. So you've got C, rest, C, rest, C, rest, rest, E. You might want to put in just and 4 because the counting is going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4, E. So it'll sound like this. 1, and 4. Let me just show you measure 49 what that fingering is going to look like. So you've got your low 1, reach for B, fourth finger for D natural, and then low 1 for G sharp. So together it'll sound like this. And you've also got accents on the bow changes and a crescendo through that measure. While we're talking about dynamics, in 48, in order to be able to do that piano, I want you to play this in the middle of the bow, because if you play it too close to the frog, there's no way you're going to be able to get soft enough. Okay, I think that's all we've got to talk about for this part, so I'm going to go ahead and set my metronome at 100 and play through it. 2, and go. Rest, 2, 3, 4. Rest, 2, 3, 4. 1, and 2, and 3. 2, 3, 4, 1. And 4. You might have noticed that I just put my bow in my left hand to hold it while I did the knocking. I think that's probably the most efficient thing to do, although you would have time theoretically to put it down. I worry about clattering bows on stands and not being able to pick it back up in time. So if you just put it in your left hand and then pick it back up after the knocking, you should be fine. Okay, happy practicing, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for the next section. Okay, violas, another fun part today. Let's mark in a few things before we play through it. Starting at 43, you've just done that slide down from third position to A. At the end of the measure, you're going to play that A with a fourth finger. 44, high 3 for G sharp. At the end of 44, I think the best thing to do is to stay in first position, G sharp, E, G sharp, and then jump to that third position 3 and do that same slide down to first position. So what that'll look like, this is the end of 43. Jump. Okay, so just playing from 44. first position. So beat 3 of 44, that G sharp you might have to cut pretty short in order to do the shift, but that's no big deal. At the end of 45, they give you a courtesy accidental to remind you that that G goes back to a natural. At 46, you can play both of those Ds open, and that second open D is going to give you a chance to do that same shift to that third finger E in third position. So 46 will look like this. Same thing. So even though you're doing a lot of kind of jumpy shifts, the good news is it's always going to the same place, going to the same note. In measure 48, we're actually going to change the bowing. Since this is a piano all of a sudden, I want you to start at up bow and slur that whole part together. So slurring the E to the C that's tied to the quarter note C. Then 49 will start down bow. That E flat you're going to play with a low 2. And then in measure 50, you've got that same rhythm that we had when we were practicing for festival, the 8th note followed by an 8th rest that's just going to sound like a short quarter note. However, on beat 3, or the end of beat 3, you've got 2 8th note rests in a row. So the rhythm is going to be A, rest, rest, E. It's going to sound like this. And 4. I just want to show you the bowing that we changed 48 and 49, starting on that up bow. So you're resting on the first 2 beats, so it'll be 1, 2. And that was the first note in measure 50. Other things to notice would just be a couple of articulation markings. In measure 44, you've got 2 8th notes. One has a tenuto and one has a dot. You're going to play this exactly the same way you played 41 and 42, so a longer, heavier bow, and then come off the string on the up bow. Other than that, just make sure you're playing nice and loud at the beginning because you're marked fortissimo, and then all of a sudden at 48, your piano, which I think is going to be really helped by the bowing, where we're starting at the tip for the up bow, and then you're going to crescendo through 49 back to forte at 50. Okay, that's all I've got for this part. I'm going to set my metronome at 100 and play through this. 2 and go. 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, there you have it. Happy practicing, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for the next part. Okay, cellos, so you guys get the melody through here, starting at 43. Let's just mark in a few things before we play through it. In measure 43, you've just come down from that slide that we did at the end of measure 42. At the end of the measure, on the last note A, what you're going to do is you're going to shift from the E up to A with a second finger on the D string. So you've been playing E, then you're going to go to A. So if this is your G tape, A would be a whole step above it. That's where your second finger is going. So starting at the beginning of 43, you have A, C, E, A. Then you're going to play the G sharp right behind it at the beginning of 44 with a 1. G sharp, G sharp. E will be with a 4 reaching over on the G string. Back to the G sharp with a 1. Then back to the 4 for the E, and slide down to the A. I'm going to go through that whole part one more time. So starting at the beginning of 43, A, C, E, A, G sharp, G sharp, E, G sharp, E, and slide. Okay? Then in measure 45, you can stay in first, A, C, E, G natural, F sharp, F sharp. Then in 46, use the open D 8th note to put your first finger on your third finger tape for F sharp. That's the third beat. And then for the fourth beat, you're going to jump over and play D and slide down again. So starting in 45, A, C, E, G, F sharp, that was the beginning of 46, open D, 1 for the F sharp, D, and slide. Measure 48 and 49 you can play in first position. Then in 50 for these grace notes, I would suggest shifting on the G sharp grace note up to your second finger. So G sharp A will be 2, 3. Then half position, D sharp E will be 1, 2. And then straight across in half position, 2 for the last note A. So starting in 49, 3 for the B, 1 for the E. Shift up, your first finger will land on your fourth finger tape. G sharp is a 2, A is a 3, 1, 2 for the D sharp and then the E, and then straight across again for the 2. I'm going to show you what all of this looks like, so you can pause the video and mark any fingerings in that you need to. Other things you might want to notice would be the rhythm. In 43 and 45, and 47, you've got eighth notes followed by eighth rests, so that's what we were practicing when we were getting ready for the sight reading. It's just going to sound like a short quarter note. Any eighth notes not marked otherwise are going to be played legato, like in the end of 43 and the end of 45. At the beginning of 44 and 46, where you've got the two eighth notes right next to each other, the first one has a tenuto and the second one has a dot on it, so it's going to be long, short, and on the up bow you're going to come off the string, setting it down on the eighth rest. Measure 50, I just want to mention, these grace notes are going to happen before the beat, so it's going to be ba-da, ba-da, ba. A 1, a 2, 3. So the actual note, the eighth note, is going to happen on the beat. You're just going to fit in that grace note before the beat happens. Last but not least, I just want to draw your attention to the dynamics through here. At 43, you're fortissimo, and you have the melody, so that fortissimo lasts all the way through 48. At the end of 48, pick up to 49, you drop down to piano, and then crescendo back to forte within that measure 49. I'm going to play through this slowly once, just for the rhythm, and hopefully you can play along to get this fingering correct. I'm going to set my metronome at quarter note equals 80. 1, 2, ready, go. Three, 4, 1, 2, 3. One thing to definitely notice is the first two slides that you do, going into 43 and then going into 45, you're sliding from an E, but the one that's going into 47, you're sliding from a D. And the fingering does reflect that, but just make sure that you're not trying to hit an E when it's just a D there in 47. So now I'm going to play through it at the full tempo, quarter note equals 100. 2, and go. One, two, three. Okay, that's it. Make sure you really exaggerate that crescendo there in 49. You should have plenty of bow to be able to do it on those half notes. All right, happy practicing. I'll see you back here tomorrow for the next part. Okay, basses, fun part today. So, starting at 43, you've just come off that slide that landed you on open A, and you get to do that 2 more times. So remember, in 45 and 47, you're going to be starting on E, but you're going to play it on the A string. So where your high D is on G, if you had just done your D scale and gone up to high D, straight across on your A string, that's where that note is going to be. And just pick whatever finger is most comfortable for you to slide on. Play the E, slide all the way down, and then lift your finger off, your left hand finger off at the last second. Make sure your bow is still moving so that we get to hear that A. Then at measure 48, you have been playing fortissimo, but then 48 goes to piano. You're starting on an up bow. Go ahead and write in to start that note at the tip, not only because it's 4 beats and you want to make sure you have enough bow, but also so that you can really get as soft as possible. In 49, you're going to want to definitely use the whole bow on both of those half notes to get that crescendo. And then measure 50, these grace notes are going to happen before the beat, so it's going to be a 1, a 2, 3. The actual eighth note happens on the beat, and if you're confused about that, play it once without the grace note. So just play A, E, A. And then go back and add the grace note, but make sure that it happens before the note that you were playing before. Ba-da, ba-da, ba. Okay? The fingering for that measure, you're just going to do it in half position. 1, 2, 1, 2, and then open A. Other than that, just make sure you're grabbing these accents. I'm going to set my metronome at 100 and play through this. 2, and go. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. 4, 1, 2, 3. 3, 4. That's it. I'll see you back here tomorrow for the next part.